Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am authorized to assure you that so far there is no reasonable cause for alarm. The rumors of invading armies and mass destruction are based on hysteria and are absolutely false. I repeat, these rumors are absolutely false.
Welcome to Thoughtspeak, a podcast dedicated to the discussion of K. Applegate's 1996 book series, Animorphs. My name is Coleman.
And my name is Mitchell. And as always, this episode is brought to you by our Patreon sponsors. Please give us money at patreon.com/Thoughtspeak. And to thank all those people really quickly, we have Spencer, Jack Hunter, Ben Freeman, Jennifer Baker, James Miola, Tim Aheen, Kendra, Kevin Kosklowski, Graith, Tony Pezic, Noah Troutman, Daniel Martinoli, Nita Labrada Gaffaro, Michael Blemick, Soren Joyce, and Sundown. Thank you all. Holy crap, thank you all. You guys making this show possible, making sure we keep coming back for more.
I think in our short time off the air, you have completely forgotten how to pronounce half those people's names.
You know what? It's funner, or more fun, just being a dry run, just starting at the bottom and boom, just Mario speed running right on through. And I think I do a pretty okay job. And I think most of these people probably only cringe ever so slightly upon hearing their name.
If you would like to have your name butchered by Mitchell, please go to Thoughtspeak's Patreon page, which you can find after a quick Google search, or just go to patreon.com/Thoughtspeak.
Yes, and I gave the address before too. Yes, good. Anyway, the main draw to this episode tonight. Oh, we've got one for you, folks. This is book number 36, The Mutation, and holy crap, I thought that I'd heard so much bad press about this book. The bar was extremely low, and boy, it really surprised me, to say the least.
Yeah, it's definitely a book I've heard so much about, never read. Always wanted this book because I love killer whales, and as a young Coleman, seeing an orca on the front made me really want the book, and just never picked it up for some reason. I think I was slightly past my Animorphs reading phase at that point. Wasn't brought back by the finale yet, and just never got around to it.
Yeah, this is, I think, at the point in the series where, it's kind of starting to drag on a little bit. I mean, this is 36, so there's been at least like almost 40 of these books so far, including all the Megamorphs and Chronicles and whatnot. And yeah, it's been kind of like, where are the authors going with this? How long is this war going to last? And when are we going to get some real plot advancement? And we don't really get that from this book, but that's okay. First of all, staring at the cover, it's not a bad looking book. This is a pretty cool shot, actually, and probably pretty realistic as to what they're wearing out there for their morph suits.
Yeah, I think this is where the marketing team, at least when it doesn't come to the English language, really started to hit their stride. Like the design of it, it's just a cool like burgundy, and they've got the reflections down. The cover looks pretty cool. Even the inside cover doesn't look ridiculous. When the last book that dealt with this ridiculous plot line, I remember the inside cover being one of the things I hated the most about it.
Was that the starfish or the giant squid?
It was the one where they were last time with the Pemmelite ship, where it actually showed the Pemmelite ship.
Oh, yeah, it looked like a little toy dog.
Melted Legos. Yeah, it was terrible.
Sure.
Just not a lot of sci-fi imagination in that team.
No, this is a pretty good cover, even if the cover quote doesn't really work. It says, "You won't even get the chance to change your mind." ...
Again, if it's written and it's not written by the ghostwriters or K. Applegate, then you can expect it to be gibberish and not to make much sense.
They were running out of ideas when they started grabbing from this pile of quotes. And yeah, you mentioned the under cover image. It's pretty cool. It's kind of a scene from the book. Although I imagine the entryway to be a little bit bigger, or something about the perspective here is off.
I think the entryway was just really weird in the book. I think that it should look different in some way. I mean, it's kind of camouflaged, but I don't know. But I'm going to go ahead and jump in and read the back of the book.
Oh, yeah. Read it to me, baby.
Visor 3 is still trying to find a way to reach the Pimmelite ship, the ship that was hidden thousands of feet below the ocean's surface, a ship containing technology so advanced that it is superior to anything even the Andalites have built. And this time, the Visor plans to find the ship so he can use its power to complete Earth's invasion. Jake, the other Animorphs, and Axe acquire additional deep-sea morphs in order to stop the Visor's plan. But while trying to destroy the Yeerk ship, the kids make a startling discovery: an underwater civilization. Have the kids discovered Atlantis, or is it just another trap? Even this back of the book doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
I know. I was just going to say, this is kind of a dumb explanation of, and this time, the Visor plans to find the ship so he can use it. Well, yeah, that's what he was going to do from the first time he did it.
Like, and even so, it's not... Yeah, it's like if somebody had to summarize the book for a report, like an actual reader. Like they just stole one off the teacher's desks and printed it.
It could be.
It's very straightforward and meandering. And
they don't actually know anything about the book. They're like, the team has to go underwater, and there might be Atlantis.
And they'll find some technology. And yeah, the Visor will probably use that. That'll help him.
Who knows? Yeah, well, anyway, diving right into this one.
I'll get out.
No, I mean, I've got literally so many more puns to go through. Anyway, yeah.
The tide is really turning for the Animorphs in this book.
Oh. Actually, this book actually has a pretty good opening scene, as far as these things tend to go, because this one involves Jake chilling at home, just a regular school night, and he gets a phone call from Cassie, and she's talking about, what is it? Her what's on TV or something, and it's code, of course. They have code that they speak in over the phones, and so Jake knows it means, hey, I gotta come over, something's up. So he goes over to Cassie's barn, as they always do, and he gets there, and there's like a dying Hork-Bajir. He's like bleeding out on the floor, and Jera, Hami, and Toby are there, and they're staples in the Hork-Bajir community. It's always good when they pop up.
Right from this get-go, I think we tend to butt heads with the fan base quite a bit on the books they hate. Sometimes we really enjoy it and can find a lot in, and vice versa sometimes as well. But in this sense, I think this is the first time that I started picking up that something is wrong with this book. I think there are some concepts we're going to talk about that are really interesting, and it does add some things to the world. But just from this first scene, and I only talk about it now instead of in my review, because it really pops right at the beginning of the book, is this really feels like someone who was brought in to write Animorphs, who doesn't really know what an Animorph is, and hasn't really read the series, and just had to think of a cool, action-oriented opening. And it's not a fight or anything, but the stakes given to this are following them throughout the entire rest of the book, and it just felt so weird that these were the characters we've been reading about in 35 other books. They didn't feel like themselves in the writing style or what they're doing. Yeah, again, I'm only talking about it now because right from this opening scene, it's just like they don't act like the kids who've been in 100 battles already. They don't act like kids who experienced it. This almost feels like book 2 or 3 version of the Animorphs experiencing this event.
Okay, wait a minute.
The way they react to it, the way it affects them.
Before you start, or before you continue to shit all over this opening scene, I'd just like to explain a little further. So Jake arrives, and it turns out this Hork-Bajir, this downed Hork-Bajir, is the victim of some new Yeerk experimentation. They're trying to put gills on these poor bastards because, as the competent Hork-Bajir there explain, they're trying to get back down to that Pimmelite ship, that sweet, sweet Pimmelite ship. And although I gotta say this plot is it's used as Cassie's motivation throughout this particular story. It really keeps her focused. but it's pretty much dropped by the end of the book. What they're going to do as far as these poor Hork-Bajir that have been experimented on and are kind of just doomed to die. And what you were saying about the characters not feeling like themselves, I thought this was a very tense scene where obviously a character's dying and somebody's, they're sad, and it's especially a powerful moment for Cassie because, as the humanitarian of the crew, this really goes against what she believes in. And I don't know, they even, kind of hug it out, Jake and Cassie do, and then just hours later they have to have their little group meeting there to discuss.
Well, real quick, to go back to this scene.
Yeah.
The concept of it is great. The idea that they're experimenting on Hork-Bajir, obviously the hosts have no way of, accepting this. It's just Yeerks forcing the bodies to do whatever. All of that is super messed up and is a great catalyst for the story they're trying to tell. The writing isn't even bad. I don't think the writing in this book is bad at all. I think it just feels very far removed from the series we've been reading up to this point. And the way Jake and Cassie, in the moment, react to it, the way they run at each other and hug each other, while that's totally normal, it just all felt wrong for them. There's no stoicism. There's no Jake stepping up. They're just instantly, keeled over by this. And they've come across way more messed up things than this. Way more messed up. But they just fall apart at this concept. And this concept is horrifying. But again, not more horrifying than everything they've already gone through. Like I say, it feels like very early Jake and Cassie, and then also not really the Jake and Cassie we know, even earlier in the book. So it just fell off from the get-go to me.
Okay. Well, I want you to know that I had a completely different experience, and this kind of piqued my interest that, it involved some of these character factions like the Hork-Bajir that we've been seeing throughout the series, and the fact that Visser 3 has this new Seablade ship, which is very creative.
Which is cool.
Very creative in his department there. It's pretty much the same thing as the Blade ship, except it can go underwater.
I just imagine a bunch of Yeerk engineers sitting around in their little laboratory, and just every 2 or 3 days, Visser 3 just runs in, super excited, like a little kid, be like, guys, I just figured out the coolest idea ever. Take my Blade ship underwater. Boom. Make it happen.
If only I could get down to that Pemelite ship with my Blade ship somehow. Make that happen. He just barked at somebody.
I want it in a week. Yeah, and it also seems silly that they had to create this humongous new ship to go underwater. I know, there's obviously tons of fights out there on sci-fi concepts of spaceships entering atmospheres and going underwater and stuff, but it just seems like there's probably a billion other ways an advanced technological race could handle this.
Yeah, exactly. I knew that, at some point they'd have to address the fact from the last book about this Pemelite ship that, it didn't work out, and the Yeerks would probably go after it again. And, kind of by the end of this one, I feel like they'd probably still try and go after it one more time.
Well, I'm surprised they tried to create a plot out of this. Like I said, the concept's fine, and all the concepts in this book are pretty interesting. Even the ones that people hate, I don't mind them as much. But I think they're opening a can of worms by having a whole book dedicated to going back and fixing a plot hole. Because how many other books ended with massive plot holes that you kind of just need to move on from and assume that somebody else fixed it?
Yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see if they do finally do something with that Pemelite ship. I can't really recall if it pops up again after this. But
I don't understand why they don't just have one android go to the Pemelite ship, put a hologram around it, and he just lives there now for all of eternity. Solves it.
The keeper of the Pemelite ship. Yeah, they could load him up with dogs. He could take his own supply of dogs and just.
Or they just take one of these hologram units and put it on the ship. They'll never find it.
Yeah, they could do something, you would think, but I guess it's not interesting enough to cover in a proper book. Although they still, I think, should have done a Chi Chronicles. Maybe that would have solved the problem of the ship.
Oh yeah, do it in Light Chronicles style, and just you could even make the entire book around the idea of like, oh man, how great would it be if Eric, because this is the book I want. Eric, in the Chi Chronicles, is sent down to the Pimlight ship to find a new way to hide it, or to get rid of it, maybe destroy it, do something to get it so it's away from the Yeerks and they can't find it or whatever.
And he ends up traveling through time.
No, while he's down there, he starts going through the records and remembering all the times in the past, like what he's been through. So it's like a prompt to go through all these memories that he can even recall them on a thing where he can live them out again or something using the ship's computer. But man, that'd be great right there. Chi Chronicles written.
Sure, yeah, if it were like Eric defending Earth from other aliens. The Man in Black.
Yeah, well, there's tons of things you can do with that.
Yeah, well, anyway, they have their typical group meeting as they do, and they're just kind of chilling out, discussing what kind of morphs to use for deep sea again, and you get your typical suggestions like the shark and the giant squid that they had. And it's actually Cassie who brings up, everybody acquiring orcas or killer whales from the gardens as they do. And
they just
it's must have been really
gardens.
Exciting for you. Yeah, they skipped the entire trip to the thing to acquire, because can't you just pet the orcas at the gardens?
Yeah, but we've seen that before. We've seen them infiltrate the gardens or do something different. But anything doing the gardens would have been way more interesting than the pseudo intro we got, where they tried out for the first time and all that. They just recreated like their first morph to dolphin scene basically in this book, as they did with the Axe book, the message. It's pretty similar with them getting hurt and having to remorph and.
Yeah, the dolphin and the whale morphs are definitely very similar, very intelligent species, both of them. But
what happens in the scene is the same, is what I'm saying.
Oh, sure.
In the message.
Yeah, basically. And then, it kind of cuts around to them waiting around to find out if this Seablade ship gets launched anytime soon, which, as they're patrolling the skies in like a seagull morph or something, they see this. You never quite have a true cloaking effect around a ship. There's always some kind of like motion blur to it that makes it seeable, at least from a bird's perspective, right? And they're able to follow it to the sea as it makes its slow ass way there and alert the whole team.
Reminded me of Tobias's early book, where he's trying to follow the big water tanker. To the forests, the mountains and stuff. But in that book, the ship was so ominous, and they didn't really know what it was, and it was kind of scary and how large and how fast it was, or whatever. And then now they've got this brand new technological ship that's moving like 3 feet an hour.
Yeah, this is a very efficient mission so far, because by the time this thing sets down in the water, everybody's there and in their new orca morphs, and as they're moving towards it, they even pick up a couple of like normal, orcas, innocent victim orcas.
That was kind of neat at first, but it's just so obvious that they're just there to die and have a scene where one dies and they don't know if it was an Animorph or not. And,
oh, dude, that was super dramatic though, right off the bat, where they're chasing this thing and then just lasered right in half. And yeah, I think when something like that, when like an insta-death sort of thing happens, you know it's definitely not one of the Animorphs, and especially since they said 2 random orcas joined us as well. It's basically just there to be a body count.
I'm going to make a bold claim here, because I know what the fan base wants. The first half of this book, almost the first half of it, is just a straight rehash of plots we've seen before. Like, I would say an almost one-to-one rehash of like a highlight reel of early Animorphs. Like, somebody was forced to write this book and had to catch up on Animorphs real quick and just took a smorgasbord of early scenes and just stuck them in the beginning of this book. And then went on to write the book they really wanted to write.
See, I don't know, man. I feel like you're very negative towards this, whereas I'm still enjoying the ride over here. I'm like, much like the rest of the audience, I'm just going, yeah, come on, let's get to Atlantis already.
See, I wasn't hating
towards.
this,
and
I wasn't.
When you
hold on, I wasn't hating this while I read it. I definitely wasn't. But I've had so much time to think about it in the turn, and there were parts that were, I wasn't happy with when I was reading it. But I've had so much time between when I read this and us recording that I've just thought about it too much, and just so much of it is just putting a bad taste in my mouth. I didn't come into this hoping to be negative about it so that, I'd join leagues with everybody else who hates it. But I really don't think it's off to a good start.
I wonder about that, though, after reading it, if it is truly as hated as we seem to think. Because, nothing about it screams bad to me right off the bat. Even though it's a lot of stuff we have seen before. And underwater battles in particular are always terrifying to the team. And the fact that, we see Jake for one of the first times I can honestly remember having to demorph and remorph like several times, 2 or 3, in the midst of a battle. Not 2
or 3, like almost like 5 times. Which I even took down a note of it, that this is something that he shouldn't be able to do. Or if he could do it, it should be a much bigger deal than they give it credit in this. This just feels like kind of a sloppy writer who knows the rules of morphine, but is playing fast and loose with them.
Well, I don't think it's unreasonable to think that at this point, Jake has the stamina, because that's really what I think it is it's like a tiresome process, morphing. So as long as he can keep his stamina up long enough, but
they've talked about recently. I'm not talking about the early books, but they've talked about recently having to do 2 or 3 morphs right after each other in the water being really, really hard, because you're not just struggling against the morphine technology, you're also struggling to keep your head afloat and take a breath and not drown in your morph.
Oh, yeah.
He did like 5 in a row.
There's a ton of in-water morphs that are more than a little difficult to believe happen without, incident, which they managed to pull off pretty easily in this. But this is a huge bloody battle right off the bat, like in the first act of the books, which is something we don't typically see. They usually save
the first acts.
Yeah, right. They typically save them, for the mid of the book or like the climax. Is where you get that, but this one following a battle that happens at sea with all their orcamorphs trying to take down this Seablade ship, they're ramming it, and they eventually manage to do enough damage to actually bring it down a little, and this is when it falls right in front of this underwater cavern kind of thing, and you get the mysterious mer people that come out and
you get the expansion of this is just like a little cave when the sea blades like heading towards it or whatever, and then they said that it's crazy. It's like the ground expanded this hole, and somehow the sea blade was able to fit into it. So it's like actively like these rocks are moving around and changing position, shape. So it's some kind of like
it's a weird.
I don't know if they ever
technology.
I don't know if they. Yeah, I don't think they ever explain it. It's just kind of whatever. This is how it works.
No, they don't. They explain their evolution / mutation, but not really that like weird alien technology that they have.
Yeah, they mutated because of the Coca-Cola plant.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Atlanta.
That's a Futurama reference.
Atlanta, yes. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. It's a Futurama reference for all you crazy cats out there.
Well, anyway, everybody, kind of manages to demorph and whatnot and remorph, and they're wondering what they should do about the blade ship, although it's sunk technically and taken out of their sight. But Jake kind of wants to push it a little bit, and he's like, maybe we should go check this out. And it's worth mentioning that at this point, everyone is super dead tired, just literally from having almost died several times and having to remorph and demorph and all that. But
this is I think one of the first times.
Huh?
I think this is one of the first times that we see the Animorphs just ready to... I mean, I think they're so bored with the plot that they're ready to be like, no, it's totally destroyed, Jake. It's fine. Like, it's very strange how all of the Animorphs are almost just completely ready to just assume that not only is Visor 3 dead, but his whole plan is ruined because the ship went into this cave. Like, there's nothing to give them any kind of, like, facts that they completed the mission.
Yeah, well, exactly. And then just when they see the bizarre looking alienish kind of creatures that wrangle this blade ship away, you know, I would hope that everybody understands that that's not a normal thing and that's something worth investigating. And that's what Jake's orders are. And yeah, Marco makes kind of a bitchy deal about it, but I think everybody else is on board. They don't really reference Atlantis so much throughout the book. I think only like 3-4 times in total.
I think it's like almost 1 or 2 like offhanded comments that the marketing team must have just jumped at.
Yeah, probably. I don't know. When they actually get into the explaining of the people and stuff, they kind of shy away from the whole Atlantis myth and give them their own name and make it their own thing, I guess. And I
was really expecting, from the way everybody talks about this book, I was honestly expecting that the people, the Atlanteans they meet, to call themselves Atlanteans and everything. Like, I was expecting this book to literally be about Atlantis. But it's really not at all.
Well, yeah, and you know, that was foreshadowed in the back of the book. Have the kids discovered Atlantis, or is it just another trap? The latter, I guess.
Just another mythological trap that they're constantly running into?
Just another case of weird mutant aliens already on Earth. Once again.
I want to read the book where they run into Sasquatch, but it's really like Visor 1's plan to fool the humans.
or it's just like a lone alien trying to get back home to Sasquatchnia or something.
No, that would be great. I would read that book. That book writes itself. Atlanteans less so.
Yeah, well, I like I said, I'm happy they strayed away from trying to develop a proper Atlantis like myth and kind of did their own thing with it, and it wasn't like Aliens, like, you know, you're inclined to think maybe with a sci-fi series. So they're scooping out this cave as they were, and this is where a bit of that magical technology comes in, and there's like blinding lights, and then suddenly they're just like in this huge underwater cave with land, you know, and breathable air. And they can just kind of demorph and walk around and be amazed.
Well, there's no reason it wouldn't have breathable air. They're still on Earth. I mean, it's just an underwater cave. That's totally plausible.
It's magic, I tell you.
It's not magic at all. I did think this part was particularly cool. Them finding the ships, walking on like the Japanese aircraft carrier.
Yeah, it's this huge ship
having all
graveyard.
The corpses.
And
having all the corpses,
this would totally be
mummified,
an awesome moment in like a TV show, be it animation or live action. I think you can imagine them, you know, walking through this. I imagine
preferably live action.
I kind of imagined something like the size of the Yerk pool, you know, because we know the Yerk pool's huge, something to rival that kind of size, except just filled with ships, as they said. And all the crews are on deck. They're all mummified, and it's super creepy. They like you said, they climbed on that aircraft carrier, and Axe and Cassie are the only ones brave enough to actually investigate the bodies, and that's just the state that they're in. It's also creepy, kind of kooky.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so you got like a Bermuda Triangle Atlantis crossover in this book.
What? You can't just throw Bermuda Triangle in there.
No, I think that's what they weren't. Obviously, they're not in Bermuda, but I think that's what they were going for. That all these ships were lost over time. And, we have myths in real life, the Bermuda Triangle, and there's certain parts of certain oceans where ships just mysteriously disappear. I think they were saying, like, these kind of Atlanteans were the explanation behind that. This is West Coast. This Amelia Earhart's ship could have been in there, or her plane could have been in there.
Yeah, I would have loved if they had pointed that out. That would have been a little on the nose, I think, though.
I think that would have been a little dark, is that, hey, look, there's famous Amelia Earhart. She's got straw sticking out of her mouth because she was stuffed like a puppet.
Remember me. So, I don't know. I thought this concept, I guess, is kind of cool because there's like mutant seagulls and stuff down there. There's like wildlife that lives in here as well as the mutant human people, which they pretty much find their little boat city right away. And they're like, your standard humanoids, human people with some kind of fishy sort of mutations.
Fishy-an aspects.
Yeah. But they call themselves the Nartek, which is just, it's a nice little original name.
Just the Nard Dogs.
Yes, exactly. That's what they sound like. And, Marco's already macking on the chicks, the mer chicks. Which is kind of almost a recurring joke when we find out that they, force breed their captives later on.
Yeah, they made Marco a little pervert in this book.
I can imagine it. I can see myself doing the same thing. Ooh, fish babes. No one's ever made it with one of them and lived to tell about it.
Let me at them. No.
I can
definitely see that you doing that too.
But at this point in the story, they're like checking out the people they assume are, like Atlanteans, and they see that the mer people have captured the Seablade ship, and they see them like unboarding the Hork-Bajir crew and stuff. Visor 3's nowhere in sight, and once again everyone's like, we're cool to call that game. We're ready to peace out. But Jake is he's playing I don't know, he's playing it safe or something, because he really wants to make sure that the mission's complete and Visor 3's not actually hiding out aboard the Seablade ship, which is the more likely scenario.
I think my problem with this book is it has a perspective problem. I think a lot of these ideas could be so good if they were explored from the right angle. So all of this with the Yeerks, I can totally believe the Yeerks. We've seen in the past that they're cowards. If they think there's even a chance of saving their own lives, they'll surrender, they'll give up, or whatever. So if they were put in a position where they thought their ship was going to be destroyed, or Visor 3 ordered them to just turn over weapons or whatever, I can see that happening. But it would have been way more interesting, I think, if this were an infiltration mission, as much as I like the Orcas, instead of like a find and destroy mission. If they had infiltrated the Seablade and tried to sabotage it from the inside, and then the Seablade got captured, and they were experiencing this with the Yeerks, and the Hork-Bajir being taken away and tortured and all of that, could have been really dark.
Oh, yeah.
Really cool.
I actually agree with you there. That would have been a really cool perspective on this story. A little different way to, get into this Atlantis plot.
Yeah.
Maybe even a little sooner. Who knows? Actually, this is the part where they're content to peace out, and they actually try to leave, but this is where they're kind of sneak attacked by the Nartek while they're demorphing on some lily pads or some water foliage, because Tobias, who's supposed to be watching from the sky, I guess took his orders a little too literally and was watching the sky where he's flying around and wasn't able to see.
We forgot they were sea people.
They snuck in from the water and took them that way. So they get captured right away. And even though they could very easily break free, Jake is like, maybe we use this as an opportunity to just kind of meet their leader and whatnot, what have you. See what they want.
Yeah, Jake is so weird in this book. And you, from the past, you can go back through our archives. I have absolutely loved every single Jake book. Jake books always have the best perspective. They always have the best narration. I really like the Jake books. This is one, Jake just acts so weird because he's obviously struggled with the am I a good leader or whatever. In this one, he's accepted that he's the leader. He's just like, ah, shucks, I should have gone the other way. Ah, shucks, I should have done this instead of that. And then like the message at the end of the book is like, leaders make mistakes, but we're all still alive. Way to go, guys. Yeah. It's just so awkward and weird.
Yeah, the end is only slightly an issue. Yeah. I kind of get where Jake's coming at in this book, because he is getting to be that more seasoned leader. There's even a line in the book where he even says to himself, "Let's go," I said. It sounded so matter of fact. I'd begun to get used to giving orders. Probably not a good thing. So you can tell he's already feeling a little bit conflicted between being everybody's friend and being their leader. But
didn't he even say at some point, he's like, I even kind of like it when X calls me Prince now.
I don't know. He didn't say that in this book. Effect. Not in this book. Maybe at some point.
I thought he had said something along those lines. Like he'd gotten used to it. He doesn't like shoot it down anymore or something like that.
It might have been in one of the previous books where, Axe was mad at him, and he said he'd allow it that one time or something. I don't know. That's neither here nor there. This is a Jake that's like torn between, wanting to get his tired team out of there as quickly as possible, and also kind of investigating this like really bizarre phenomenon. Because I'll be honest with you, I'm probably in that lump where he is, where I'd be like really curious about knowing more about these people and like what the hell's going on with them. I don't think I could just leave straight away.
Even if they have a curiosity, and I know they've seen crazy things at this point, I think they should be a little more surprised and blown away that we've been sharing our planet with another species this whole time. Like, not aliens, like these guys just chill on the bottom of the ocean, and mermaids are real, and it should be a bigger impact to the team, but they kind of just go with it. Marco tries to bang one, it's just weird.
Well, it gets, weird is definitely a good word for it, because it gets pretty dark. And I will say, I think this whole book has really dark tones overall that I think added to my enjoyment of it, just personally.
Well, yeah, they again, the concepts in this book are great, which makes me think that they come from Michael Grant or Kay Applegate. I just don't think that they're executed in the right way. So many of these concepts could be so dark and so messed up. This literally could have been one of the most messed up books in the series, and that's saying something. But because we're so far removed from them, and because it's so awkwardly handled, it's just we don't get those impacts.
The only thing I can say to that is that there are things that I wish they could almost expand on, that would be more interesting learning about. But I still think you get an effective idea of this culture and just the alien people that they encounter in this book. I think if it's going to be a one-off story, they did it justice, as far as I'm concerned. But this is the point where they get dragged off to literally like right to the freaking queen of the people, who exposits just way too much. I mean, it's everything. Like it's a character introduction that is meant to basically tell the entire history of this species, this people, which is exactly what Queen Soko of the Nartek does. She's like, oh, we have guests. Let's invite them to a feast. And then it immediately flashes
this whole thing
right
here.
Feast.
It feels like a bad Avatar ripoff. The way they interact with these people and their how they name their culture and stuff, and their different names and stuff. And it's what's weird to me is it doesn't take into account who they are, who we see that, who they become. They're not aliens, but the Atlanteans, for lack of a better term. I refuse to call them Narteks.
They're Narteks, man. I don't know what to tell you.
We see how they act later on. We know that they're torturing Hork-Bajir. We obviously see that they've captured tons and tons and tons of people throughout human history. Why are they acting this way to guests? They shouldn't have guests. This is something they go through all the time. I don't think what we see of their culture and how they act in the book are in any way related.
Well, okay, first of all, it's not really... well, actually, it is addressed how they speak English, because when they first meet, she speaks like every language until they land on English. But
which makes no sense.
It's weird because they were already
because...
speaking English, and she was like obviously in the room with them, and they made a thing about it. I don't know. I think it was just honestly
she went through like 6 languages, even though she's
why they speak English.
even though she's fluent in English, like absolutely fluent, it takes her like 20 minutes to realize they're speaking English.
Maybe she don't hear too good with them mutated ears. They're like at this awkward feast where they're basically surrounded by armed guards, and it's like, you know, what you would imagine being at their feast. It's all fish products, and the queen just kind of exposits, tells them all about their backstory and all that. How the Nartek people, you know, they were on an island which they decided to build walls around. See, all these problems stem from walls, because the island starts sinking, and then the walls they built them up and up and up, and then eventually they started molding over together, and it's a very flimsy story scientifically. And I think it's funny that even Axe points out how, you know, it's probably a blend of reality and myth at this point now.
I think this book was obviously written as a political metaphor for the current times that we're dealing with in building walls. It's a danger. You know, we could end up as America as an underwater fish people society.
Exactly. If our walls,
it starts with a border wall.
We need to build the border wall tall enough so that when it sinks, it can bend inward and form a protective dome over America, which we will then call the Freedom Dome.
Yeah, the way they describe it in the book, they should have just kept building walls, and then there'd just be this hole in the middle of the ocean where the society is.
That would be kind of cool.
Instead they built it like an igloo, which honestly is a little problematic. It's a little cultural appropriation. Which it makes no sense to how they were like falling into the water.
Yeah, well, don't try to apply too much logic to it. They also kind of spice up the recipe here for this civilization a little bit with the talk about the Narna rocks, which are like these radioactive rocks. I guess they're the light source that they've been seeing throughout that lights this undersea world.
These rocks are just the best. You guys got to try these out. Highly radioactive. We don't know what that means. we just love them. We use them as night lights in the cribs of our children.
They fill their pillowcases with them and sleep on top of them.
We just love these things.
Oh man, have you ever tried licking one? They taste excellent, and they're hallucinogenic.
I usually crush some up with my after dinner drink.
Yeah. So basically, they're like this super mutated, messed up, inbred race of fish people underwater. It's like a Rob Zombie film, but under the sea. So they got that going for them. And I thought even creepier, the queen just straight up reveals like, oh yeah, we love stuffing all the people that we find on their ships. And I think the only reason they don't outright do that to these people is because they showed up, without a ship. And so they're kind of like, well, how the hell did these people get here?
Well, no. One of the big things is that it's not just about stuffing them and having trophies. They also admitted to, every culture they come across, basically raping them to death. That's a big part of it.
Yeah, they mentioned
obviously
doing a little bit of crossbreeding. Yeah, and it's kind of funny. It's almost a running joke again how everyone of the kids are like, "There's better ways to get DNA. You don't have to murder." Really?
Have you ever tried asking?
Yeah, exactly. A little sample won't do you wrong. She just goes on and on about how they have been stockpiling human weapons from above ground, and they're going to launch their attack on the surface people with this new alien ship that they are so fond of. It's, of course, the Seablade ship. And, they might even have nukes. And this is where Jake is like, oh, okay, all right. Clearly now I see that, yeah, we do have to intervene at least a little bit here. So the Queen yarks about her plan and just kind of pieces out for the night.
I have to interject real quick.
Sure.
As someone who has a brother who was a nuclear engineer aboard a sub in the Navy, the U.S. Navy, nor has any other nuclear power Navy ever lost a nuclear sub without the nuclear aspects of it been recovered. It's just never happened. So the core of this plot, the fact that they might have nukes, is ridiculous. And if they had anything, they might have
It's like imagining the impossible.
Even if the best thing they could hope to get is maybe a nuclear reactor, and then that's not a weapon. You can't turn that into a weapon. Even if it melted down, it wouldn't do anything.
Well, even so, I think Jake just also kind of wanted to stop these people from even using what limited weapons they had, from launching an attack on even one Earth city, land city.
No, this is a race of poor, unfortunate mutants who have been downtrodden throughout history, and Jake, in his bloodthirsty nature, is going to bring their culture and civilization down around them.
Look, these people deserve death and destruction, okay? Because as soon as the princess or the queen pieces out and leaves them alone, Jake's like, okay, our priorities. We got to find Tobias because he's a hawk, and we got to stop that blade ship. And see if there's any like nukes or their weaponry. We just got to put an end to this crap. And the first place they go is of course the stockpile of the most powerful weapons, books at the library. And
that's where I go.
It's almost like okay, here's a little bit more information on these characters, just so you get the real scoop. You got the Queen's version of history in that last chapter, but now you get Axe rooting around in a library doing his little Axe notes, and just kind of lays it all out there about the people and how mutated and inbred and just destined to die because of it. they really are. So you get the feeling right off the bat that these people aren't really a threat overall.
Well, yeah, I mean, you get the not just feeling, but you're flat out told that there's no way a civilization that relies on capturing groups of people from the surface and then crossbreeding that to have some genetic diversity, it's impossible to do in the long run. They've already probably, just from the sound of it, this Hork-Bajir and Seablade is the first time in a long time they've had anybody come down there or be captured. And then what can they really do with a bunch of Hork-Bajir? It's going to mess with their genes, and if they can even accomplish what they normally do with humans. Humans are the only people that they've taken over the years. So who knows if their technology even works crossbreed. And then the idea that they got a whole Seablade worth of crew, they can't keep that up over the years. How many more times are the Yeerks going to have a ship filled with hundreds of soldiers come down there? The civilization's going to be dead in like 50 years anyway.
Well, yeah, exactly. They don't have the longevity to really do much of anything with any technology that they find, be it human or Yeerk. And as the Animorphs are being led around, because they got a guide with them, of course. When you're letting your captured prisoner guests walk around and explore your city,
yeah.
Learn everything. They at least got to have one armed guy kind of sticking with them. But at one point, he's finally like, okay, and now it's time for the hospital tour to start. And they're all like, I don't know about that one, guy. And he's like, oh, no, I insist. And, again,
no, it's the best.
Again, the Nartek people pop up from just fucking like a vase of water that's nearby. I'm like, any little water source that's around them, they pop up.
How did we fall for this again?
One of them pops up from like a teapot, grabs Rachel.
No, Cassie remembers the Hork-Bajir being mutated, and a single tear falls from her eyes, and a Nartek flies out of it.
There you go. All of that would be quite interesting. So this is actually kind of another really dark turn to the book, where they wake up in their Nartek hospital facility where they're about to be stuffed, and they've actually been drugged, so they're like into it. Ish. There's very little they can do. I mean, for all intents and purposes, they'd be totally dead and stuffed here, if not for, of course, your wingman Tobias comes in with the ultra rare Nartek morph and saves the day.
Tobias is always there to save you from getting your delicious human nougat center drilled out of you to add into a genetic pool.
Well, that's why I say he's the ultimate wingman, really. But
because he's a hawk.
I'm gonna have more puns all throughout the show. Don't worry, no shortage here. So yeah, that's like a brief little action drama upbeat tick here. So it goes without saying they escape it easily, and this is where they're finally like, okay, we got to get to that Seablade, check out what's going on in there, and see if we can't, fly it out of here or crash it, do something with it. And they get on it with very little difficulties. They're just kind of in battle morph, running through the complex, running past the civilians who don't really do anything to stop them. And they're able to get on the blade ship with no problems. But this is where, they kind of hunker down, and Axe is trying to access the computer to fly it and get them out of there, and it's not really going well. And of course the Nartek are invading from outside and trying to damage the ship and get their way in.
This is supposed to be a huge like action sequence, like war epic scale, and it's just really more about them getting through that door to the bridge the whole time, and then maybe a couple missiles come at them, and I don't know, it lost that scale I think it was going for, because it was trying to be all tense and suspenseful, and they're in control of the ship, and I just didn't really work for me.
Well, yeah, it was like a countdown sort of situation where they're in the ship and they're waiting to get out of there and make things work, and they're being attacked from the outside, and it's very tense, and they're taking heavy damage. And then Visor 3 shows up, and he's in another one of his big scary morphs called the Luminar, which like has this electricity, I guess. And unforeseen, I guess, is they decide that they have to work with Visor 3 to get out of there. It's the only way. So you got that cliche of having to team up with your enemy once again. In this case,
I thought this was
because he has the security protocol that Axe needs to actually be able to fly the ship.
I actually think that their interaction here with Visor 3 was actually one of the better things of the book. This felt pretty different, even though it's a concept that's old as sin. Them having to work with Visor 3 here and their like quips back and forth, I thought were pretty funny, and it worked really well.
Well, yeah, we have Jake is actually talking to Visor 3 now, which they do more and more frequently, but I think it's just Jake and Axe that talk to him. And of course they're like, we have to work with him, but as soon as we can, we got to betray him and really screw him over. And to their credit, that's exactly what they do, is they let him put in the security thing, and they start flying the ship towards the exit, towards the ocean. But as soon as they get to the sea, they basically crash and sink the ship, because they didn't really reveal to Visor 3 that I think the whole like under hull area was blown out or removed. So the ship starts, sinking.
This only works because Visor 3 didn't realize that what their goals were. If he would have thought about why they ended up in this situation in the first place, he would realize that he was going to get screwed over here. because he's just trying to get out, and he thinks they're trying to get out, but they're also dead set on, their mission objectives at this point.
Well, they're getting out without the blade ship, whereas he thinks they're getting out with the blade ship. So
that's it's kind of a stupid error on his part.
Well, I mean, he doesn't really have a choice, so to speak, I guess, because as he says himself, he can't pilot the Sea Blade ship without a crew, so that's why he doesn't kill them. So he kind of needs them more than they need him. I mean, after he turned off the security thing, they could have just killed him then and there if they had the ability. They probably
See, this book could have really surprised us. I would have loved to have seen them barely make it out. It's a super tense scene. And then they're like, they destroy the Nartek behind them, and they barely get out of there. And it's, Jake and all of them just, like, breathing heavily and, like, just coming down off the high of being in mortal danger with Visit 3. And they look over at each other and be like, man, we've been through a lot. This really changes things. And then, working together after that point. Animorphs and Visit 3.
They shake hands and then do a little fist bump.
I'm not even saying Visitor 3 leaves the Yeerk Empire. I'm just saying everybody becomes friends.
There's a new air of respect throughout the galaxy.
You know what? You guys have been a thorn in my side this whole time, but damn it if I don't respect the hell out of you.
So it all kind of culminates in this. They crash the Seablade ship, and the team manages to morph sharks and get out of there. And they say they see a giant squid or something like that taking off, which is of course Visitor 3. So everybody escapes scot-free, and the team basically just kind of heads home, having learned yet another powerful lesson about just how murderous and evil humans can be, even when they're mutagenic Nartek people. But that's kind of like the downer note to end on. Like, well, we saw some weird shit, and it's really not something we should ever talk about again. I feel like is how they feel there at the end.
Which we understand completely why they can't talk about the Yeerks, why they can't spread the message about the Yeerks, because it would put the Earth at a full all-out invasion if everyone knew the Yeerks existed. Why can't they tell anybody about the Nartex? Because this seems like any ship or ocean liner or anything that goes under and is taken by the Nartex from this point on is blood on their hands.
The feeling that I got was that they didn't really think of these people as a threat or a danger or anything like that. They just kind of wanted to seal them off there at the bottom of the ocean and let them kind of live their course, or run their course, knowing what they're doomed to do.
But we've already established that they had, this massive underwater cave. Not even massive, that's a horrible word for it. This gargantuan, like just bigger than, it's like continent-sized underwater cave. And they had hundreds of thousands, if not millions of humans dead and stuffed with their genetic code tortured out of their bodies, as proof in this cave. So obviously, I don't care if Jake doesn't think they're a threat. They've killed millions of humans after torturing them for all of human history. They're a threat. They're one of our oldest enemies, if that's true.
That might be the case, but at the same time, it's not really affecting the war with the Yeerks, so to speak. I mean, it did this one time because they got their ship.
Okay, well,
which is what they do. They collect ships.
Point me towards the book series where a ragged bunch of young teenagers fight the Nartex, because apparently the Animorphs can only handle one invasion at a time. And it's honestly, even think about this. End of the series. Yeerks are defeated. Not a spoiler. You all know this.
Spoilers!
Yeerks are defeated. They're on set of the Animorphs movie with Marco, special effects advisor, and they're recreating the scene of their fight with the Nartex. A movie producer look over and be like, wait, did this happen? Are there a race of
that would be
Atlanteans
awesome.
under the water killing tons of humans?
And then you have like Jake and Marco, whoever's there, just kind of stare at each other and then stare back at him and shake their heads. No. That would be awesome.
This is something the world's governments need to know about. All right, someone needs to handle this.
Well, look, after the series ends, I assume they had a lot of stuff to discuss with scientific scholars and all that concerning Sario, Rips, and all kinds of things. I mean, my God. Oh my God, yeah, that's the end of the Mutation. We finally got through it. And I kind of want to hear your review first. I think yours is going to be different from mine. So let's hear that.
Yeah, you were so happy after this book and all of its totally not nonsensical storylines. Stop
reviewing my review.
I give your review 2 stars. So it's, again, I want to reiterate. I think that the concepts, the main ideas in this book are incredibly interesting. I'm even talking about the faux Atlanteans as well. But the things that happen in this, the dark turns it takes, I think all of that is great. I think the writing is fine. There's nothing necessarily wrong with the writing, other than the fact that I think it disregards, mostly in the beginning, but it pretty much disregards the Animorphs' personalities, their history, where they are in the series. I think it majorly derails from what we've been reading lately. And I honestly think that I think what got the writer excited about this book was the fact that the whole Atlantean plotline comes out of nowhere, and it's like halfway through the book. And so it's kind of this reveal of like, hey, we thought this was what the book was going to be about, but not really. Here it's about these people. And I think intentionally the first half of the book is made to, follow roads we've been down before. It's supposed to look like, it's intentionally written to look like the standard everyday mission. But I think they carried it on too long to the point that it's uninteresting. And then I think once we did that big turn and we went down to the Atlantean Society, other than the initial concept of, they've been taking these people and there's all this cave of giant ships and they're torturing and taking the genetic code, the Atlanteans themselves, the Nartek themselves, are super bland, uninteresting characters with just weird reactions, and the plot itself doesn't make a whole lot of sense for the Animorphs being down there and being like not really prisoners. Them constantly, every time they steal somebody, do they explain their entire plan and history of their people to them? Like it doesn't make sense to the point of being, again, uninteresting and just, I want to get through this book. And then the whole, action beat at the end, what should be the tentpole of the movie or book, there's no real stakes or anything. You just want them to get done with this book because it's not going to affect anything. So, I mean, honestly, just for the concepts and stuff alone, I was going to give this like a 2, maybe even a 3, because I do think there's some really good ideas for the series in this book as a standalone story. But I just think it's just not. It's not worth reading as part of the storyline. It's not worth reading as just a fun book. Especially if you care about the Animorphs and you want to see where it's going and everything. It's not really doing anything for you. So I'm going to give it, it's going to sound really harsh. I'm going to give it 1 out of 5 Seablade ships. It's not good in retrospect, and it wasn't good while I was reading it. It was just fine while I was reading it, and then parts of it are making me actively angry now. So I think the fan base is right to put this one down.
Okay.
And again, I love killer whales.
Okay, dear listener, pull up a seat, because I'm going to spin you a tale. All right. About a book that at first I thought, how good can this be? This is going to be a one-off, obvious story. Their take on Atlantis. So going into it, you're already thinking like, all right, come on, let's get to Atlantis. Let's see what they say it is. Let's see what their spin on it is. Okay. And right off the bat, they hit you with the trying to be real dramatic, like, oh man, remember that we're in this war where people are dying and they're being experimented on by their captors, the Yeerks. This felt like a very one-off book, like that you could just pick up at any point and read, and you'd get the gist of, like the Animorphs versus the Yeerks thing. And then it's kind of like the classic bait and switch plot where you think it's going to be about, dealing with this Seablade ship and the Pemelite ship, and there'd be some closure to that, but well, that's how we brought you in, but we're going to switch it out with this Atlantis plot all of a sudden. And then it from that point, it really seems like they just needed to set up, okay, here's our story of Atlantis. Like, this is how it happened. This is probably what's going to happen with the people. And here's our team of Animorphs just kind of exploring this culture. And there's a little bit of danger, a little bit of peril, but they're going to get out of it just fine. And there's a little bit of Visor 3 because we all like him, and we like it when he shows up for the finales of these things. And in a real unexpected twist, they have to kind of work together even for a moment. And, this whole book kind of felt like one of those like 4D theme park rides. Like the Spider-Man ride at Universal? You remember that one where you sit in the cart and it kind of takes you through this like Spider-Man plot where you're following him and there's villains jumping out and stuff. That's what this felt like, where you're like following them under sea and whoa, there's a big battle going on. Oh no, alien Atlantis people, let's follow them. And then we go in and we're like shooting through the boatyard and it's creepy. And then it felt like they were really trying to rush through this Atlantean culture, which I give them props for kind of doing their own thing and making it interesting in that way. And to that end, this book really satisfied my curiosity. It gave me a nice little self-contained adventure where I even felt like the team, at least in Jake's case, was showing some character growth. Jake makes decisions that I think he would have struggled with a little bit before, much easier now, and is even a little self-referential in some of those aspects. And, it just shows that he's still having character growth, and we're going to see some more tension possibly between him and Cassie and their particular ideals. Because Cassie keeps bringing up about, oh man, them experimented on Hork-Bajir, we got to do it for them, and then by the end of it, that plot's just kind of dropped. As they swim away, and I assume it's not going to be brought up again. So, I enjoyed the book for more than what I thought it was. I went into it expecting just garbage and trash, but I came away going, you know what, that wasn't a waste of time. And I think it was cool the way that they did Atlantis on their own, and now we don't have to talk about it again. So, I based on just my sheer enjoyment and surprise of this book and the way I felt like it was a good, quick pick up and read one, I honestly wholeheartedly feel like this book is at least a 3, possibly a 4. Swooshes.
Man, just
swoosh the orcas.
Just think of all the books that you've given a 4 before. It seems crazy to me that this one even comes close.
Yeah, it really surprises me too. But it's based on like just my expectations of it overall, and then being like, well, I don't see why people shit on this. for what it is, it gave us everything that we really love about Animorphs. And it was really dark, is the thing. That's the thing that surprised me, is I keep forgetting how dark these things are going to be unexpectedly.
But it wasn't. The ideas were dark. In other books, the scenes themselves are dark. This one, it would make a reference to something super dark and then walk away from it as fast as possible.
Okay, you know what? Here's a comparison for you. People love that one of the most recent Tobias books we read, the one where he got captured and tortured. They love that one for how dark that is of Tobias getting tortured. But honestly, like I mentioned and talked about in that review, it wasn't real like adult torture. It was just him in a box and she's pushing a button that, you know, is like a pain button. They think that's dark, where I think the implication that, you know, people are drugged and mummified and force bred and just the innocent slaughter of like, you know, these earthen creatures. They made a huge deal about that whale being beached just a couple books ago, and now we're getting orcas fully, you know, Draconed in half right in front of the team.
No, but you're mixing up the two. So the idea, what you're talking about not liking, is what this book does versus that Tobias book, because in this one you have you know, the concept of their genetic core or whatever DNA being pilfered from the Hork-Bajir in the distance and hearing them tortured is so vague and broad. We don't know how they're doing it. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. We know something really bad's happening and Hork-Bajir is screaming. Versus the Tobias book, where the torture wasn't just hitting a button. It was the idea of them, one button bringing pleasure and making you think of great things, and then being pushed harder in the opposite way, back and forth. Like, it went deep into what the torture was in that Tobias book, and that's why it was so horrible, versus this one, which is just vague. They're being tortured.
No, I don't think the actual torturing process was as fleshed out in this one. Just
but that's what I'm saying.
The concepts of being, like, you know, drugged and raped for all intents and purposes, and
well, yeah,
all that
the
stuff.
Ideas.
Those are dark themes as well.
That's what I was saying, though, is that the ideas in this one are super dark and good ideas, but the execution in the scenes don't pay off on that darkness. They don't. There's no dark scenes in this book. It's all pretty light and fluffy. But the ideas are pretty horrific. And I'd say the only place where it gets close is, like you said, the whale getting cut in half by the Dracon beasts. But even then, it doesn't detail it out or have that scene play out the drama of how horrific it was. It's like at the beginning of this book, where the Hork-Bajir being mutated is horrifying to Jake and Cassie. But we don't feel that from them.
Well,
we just hear about it.
That's I think up to the reader, because they do mention, you know, like, oh, this is a guy my dad knew and stuff. They at least mention that there's a connection to Toby and Jera while they're there. It's not like some rando Hork-Bajir.
It's all just talk and exposition. Like, I'd rather have seen play out where we saw that. We had, oh my gosh, how great would have this whole, skip the Atlanteans, skip all that crap. If you would have had a book completely about the mutation of this process of mutating the Hork-Bajir, and you would have seen, like, maybe the Animorphs go on a mission with the Free Hork-Bajir, and it's like a huge success. It's like this mission they couldn't have done on their own, and the Hork-Bajir are right with them, and maybe we learn a little bit more about a few more of the Hork-Bajir characters outside of Jeremy and Toby and everything, and you maybe meet a few more Hork-Bajir characters, and then the Animorphs go back to their everyday life or whatever, and then the Hork-Bajir come running to them and say something horrible's happening, and they take them to the lab, and you see these characters who you met at the beginning of the book now with gills and part of this horrific experiment, and that leads to a mission. That would have been... Oh, yeah, that would have been the good follow-up, or not a follow-up, or lead into for this book. Yeah.
It was all to go to Atlantis, baby. Yeah, they definitely didn't do a good job of tying, you know, that plot into the overall plot. It's
about focus. They could have done any of these concepts more in depth.
Tons of reasons to get these characters into a quick Atlantis story and get them out, you know, before bedtime. I just thought it was super interesting that, you know, they thought they were going to do one mission and they have a terrible, horrible, no good night, and then out of curiosity, they're like, oh, okay, let's go check out this one thing, even though they're all super tired. And then that turns into this whole other thing where they get taken prisoner and they're like, oh my God, we discovered like fish people. They're all super tired and just want to go home at that point. And they kind of rush it there in the end, but I don't know. I enjoyed the little ride. I enjoyed it for what it was. I don't know. This is probably the point where I guess we should maybe mention the next episode or something. Yeah.
Yeah, what is the next episode?
The next episode, my friend, is Animorphs number 37, The Weakness. And this is the one with Rachel morphing a cheetah on the front, I believe. And it is also one that I think I've never read, the one where Rachel has to take over as leader while Jake is out of town. What could go wrong?
Yeah, I've heard of this one, but not much about it. I know that basic plot and how it factors into some of the other books later on in the 40s.
Yeah, I think she does a bad job. Right?
Yeah. Go figure. The non-leader of the Animorphs leads the Animorphs poorly. It's always the people who, it's the classic saying, someone who wants power doesn't deserve to have it. Like, that's who you don't want to be in charge.
Oh, yeah.
So they say about governors or presidents or anyone running for office. You want the person who doesn't want to be in that position to actually have it, not the person who's wanted their entire life to be president.
Right? That's me. Elect me. I don't want to be there, but I should be.
A vote for Mitch is a vote in the trash. That's what I say. Anyway, but yeah, so that's actually probably a super interesting book. I'm looking forward to that. I don't know anything about how it goes with the fans or anything.
Yeah, like I said, my research on this one has been fairly light. So I guess we'll see when that happens. Until then, ratings and reviews on our iTunes really help us out. We super enjoy those, hearing from you fine folks. And that's really how the show gets out there and gets known. So you want to make sure you're doing that to help us out.
Yeah, the iTunes reviews are super important. Going to our Facebook page, liking that, going to our Twitter, interacting with us on there, or just going to the main site and supporting us, commenting on things there. These are things that all help out the website, all help out the podcast. Obviously, nothing helps as much as going to our Patreon and helping physically support the show, helping us come out and put out an episode. We've had a little bit of a break after the last few, but we, are trying to get back on schedule.
Summers are always busy here at Thoughtspeak.
Well, the end of summers are super busy for me because I work for a university, so that's been my biggest drama with trying to put on an episode. But we should be back into it now. But again, your support means the world to us and helps us remember why we do this. So,
heck yeah, dog! And you know what? It's always good to be reading this book series that we both grew up with and really love, and especially reading these books that we have not had the pleasure to read before. I know we're about to hit a huge string of ones that I think I kind of cherry-picked from here on out through the end of the series. So we'll definitely be hitting a lot that are new experiences for the both of us, I think.
Yeah. I'm excited. I'm excited to get to the weird ones that I do know, like the one where Jake wakes up and he's an adult in the future.
Yeah. There's always some familiar good ideas.
So yeah, we're looking forward to those, but thanks for joining us this week. Hope you're just enjoying our whole catalog. Go back, listen, start at one, come back through, see how we've grown as podcasters. But it really feels like we've gone over the crest of the hill of the series with 36. I mean, it feels like we're on the other side now, heading towards that ending. So it's interesting, and I'm excited for what's coming.
We'll see. We're getting there very slowly. It's like we're walking on our hands towards the end.
Backwards.
It's somewhat efficient. I mean, it gets us there, just kind of at a weird pace. So.
And we look strange while we do it. But anyway, so thank you again, and I've been Coleman.
And I am Mitchell, and thanks for listening. Come back and check us out next time. Peace, y'all.